Khans of Tarkir that we really saw this deck move to the front of Legacy. Now, that was back when Treasure Cruise was around. We saw it take down and open here. It fell off a bit, but with Dig Through Time, how do you feel about these really aggressive takes on Delver of Secrets?
I think it's less efficient than having Treasure Cruise be the way that you're trying to win the game, but the card is still very, very powerful, and these kind of decks do want to play some one-ofs, and that plays very nicely with Dig Through Time. There's a Vapor Snag, a Pyroblast, and partially that's because of Dig Through Time's appearance in the deck.
All right, well, Michael Majors is on the play here. He's going to start with a Thoughtseize. We see Gerard's opening fairly powerful. He has 2 lands. He has that Monastery Swift Spear, a Forked Bolt, and then 3 cantrips with Brainstorm, Ponder, and Jataxian Probe.
And if I'm in Michael's spot here, I'm probably just looking to take the threat card. If he's got a removal spell in hand, maybe you see him just take Brainstorm, which is the most powerful card in the hand.
Now we'll see here. It's really just going to be to slow down Gerard here, not really. There's so much redundancy in that, and you have to think it won't be long before Gerard reassembles an attack.
Yeah, although it's just an issue of time from Major's standpoint. You know, you just slow it down. If Gerard spends a couple of turns cantripping here but not applying pressure, that's not a bad spot for Majors to be. He's got a much better late game.
All right, Gitaxian Probe shows Majors' hand. Lands numbers 2 and 3. He has a Brainstorm of his own, a Spell Pierce, and then a copy of Dig Through Time. Interesting that Dig featuring prominently in both decks, 4 in Majors, 3 in Gerard's. But when you look at, Majors deck, definitely more of a control shell. The creatures are Baleful Strix and Snapcaster Mage. That's it. I do actually think he's leaning on those 2 Sphinx's tutelage to win the game for him.
I mean, he can do it through Snapcaster and Baleful Strix beatdowns, but that's a harder way to do it. Also, one main deck copy of Jason the Mind Sculptor is a way to win.
It's interesting. It's when you think about blue-based control decks, maybe Esper control decks in Legacy, you oftentimes think of something like Stoneblade or something like Miracles that either uses a countertop block to close out the game, or perhaps Stoneforge Mystic. Sphinx's Tutelage as a 2-of is certainly a leaner package. You know, it's only 2 cards to win the game. It lets you play more control-based cards. At the same time, it does seem like you really need to control the board because it's not going to win quickly.
Right, and you are a little bit more vulnerable to Abrupt Decay than a couple other decks are.
Now, Gerard on his second turn finds a copy of Delver of Secrets. That replaces the Swift Spear that Majors took on turn 1. Gerard plays a fetch land, and he'll go ahead and pass back. He did use his Ponder there, so what we know from Major's side, there's still a Forked Bolt and a Brainstorm waiting in Gerard's hand.
You can see why Majors took the Swift Spear off of that initial Thoughtseize. His hand, though powerful with a lot of cantrips and Dig Through Time to play towards, vulnerable to creatures currently.
Let's see if he plays a third land. He's going to start with a Brainstorm here, leaving that fetch land open. Can he find a removal spell? He finds Ponder, Force of Will, another Ponder. A lot of cantrips and velocity here, but not actually very much interaction.
Yep. I mean, he can reset this and Ponder. He can shuffle with his Flooded Strand and then Ponder. He's got a lot of looks at a removal spell if that's what he really prioritizes right now.
Yeah, it looks like he's going to go ahead and get rid of some of that those cantrips as he cracks the fetch here. Would not be surprised to see him fire off another cantrip. Obviously looking for just some sort of kill spell. He does place 4 copy of Swords to Plowshares. Maybe one of his 4 Baleful Strixes would also be welcome here.
Yeah, he's taking a slightly different path here if he's getting an island. He could have gotten another copy of Tundra and used the Underground Sea to Ponder, which would give him a bunch of looks at Swords to Plowshares, so that was what he was really trying to do.
Yeah, and it's interesting because he can't actually stabilize with the Baleful Strix because he knows about a Forked Bolt in Gerard's hand. Also, because Gerard pondered to get into that Delver of Secrets, there's a reasonable expectation that the Delver will turn into a 3-2.
Yeah, and Michael they're able to find his copy of Swords of Plowshares, but without a white source available, he's just simply going to go for it next turn.
On Gerard's side, looks like he's actually going to go for a fetch here, so this is going to be a blind flip for the Delver. He didn't find the instant or sorcery. We'll see. He does still have a Brainstorm left in hand, so if he wants to get very aggressive, he can Brainstorm an upkeep to ensure that Delver will flip.
Yep.
And he's just going to go for it, and it looks like he's found a Lightning Bolt. We'll see here in a second if the Delver turns into a 3-2. I believe it does not, so something else.
We're a little early in the game to be bluffing with Delver reveals.
Yeah, I think it was Scalding Tarn for the turn, so Delver will just attack for 1. There'll be the fetch land cracked. And we'll see what he's going for here. So if he didn't Brainstorm, he's also cracking this fetch land before brainstorming here. So perhaps he's found something like True Name Nemesis or some other threat.
I mean, he could cast Dig Through Time if that was what he wanted to do.
He does have 5 in the graveyard already. And that is True Name Nemesis. Gets that one down. See if it'll sneak by Michael's counter magic. He does have Force plus blue card. There are not a lot of ways in the main deck for him to remove True Name. I think he's going to have to fight over it.
Yeah, he kind of does. Not a great place for a control deck to be because normally True Name Nemesis is not very good here. But you look at Michael's list here, he's got some creatures to block with, some removal spells, and Sphinx's Tutelage. Tutelage is pretty slow, and the creature's removal spells don't do anything.
Yeah, and I actually like a heads-up play on Michael's part there. He pitched Gataxian Probe to the Force of Will. It's a card you often would see a player fire off in that situation, especially because Michael had 1 mana up. But no, instead gets to pitch it here. And now he'll go for a Ponder. And that is actually, you were saying that about Michael's deck. He, despite being a control deck, does not appear to have a real sweeper in his list.
Yeah.
At least not in the main deck. He's got some good sideboard options. So has kept the board somewhat clean, kept the second creature off. He'll Ponder. See if he does have that answer now to Delver of Secrets. And for Michael, this seems to be going according to plan. He's got that Dig Through Time. He's trading lots of spells.
The issue here is, it's going to be some effort for Majors to turn around and start winning the game. He's only got so many ways to do it.
Right.
And Gerard's potentially looking at a lot of draw steps, a lot of opportunities to reassemble. But Majors has to be pretty happy with how the game has gone so far.
And he swords away the Delver. And I mean, when you think about it, Michael does not actually play that much more card advantage than Gerard.
No.
Gerard has 3 digs of his own. Yes, Michael has a 4th dig. He has a Jace, and you can snap 3 Snapcaster Mages. But I mean, Gerard has some Snapcasters of his own, I'd imagine.
Yeah, there is a slight, dead/inefficient card issue in Fabiano's list, for at least for game 1 here, where you're looking at a lot of cards, Vapor Snag, Fort Bolt, Lightning Bolt even. They're not very productive cards. The 4 copies of Days are getting worse and worse as this game goes on. But in terms of just raw card advantage, Fabiano can hang with Majors. It's not like Majors is really outdrawing him by that much.
Yeah, and that's really the interesting part. Were Majors playing a Miracles deck here and all this trading was happening with a Divining Top in play, you'd feel like the control deck was miles ahead.
Yep.
But in this situation, maybe Gerard doesn't get in damage for 3 or 4 turns, but that might still be fine. He might be able to win even from there.
Yep.
And we see he replaces the threat. Monastery Swift Spirit gets a chance to attack. Puts Majors to 14.
We saw this last weekend for Majors in Modern, where he was playing his own build of Grixis Control, where it took him a long time to win the game. I mean, he had to fight for every inch of it. And this deck is very similar. He's not locking someone out, nor is he really generating an overwhelming amount of card advantage. It's just going to be a lot of 2-for-1 trades, a lot of value over the course of the game. And Majors is going to have to fight for a long time to hang on to this edge.
Well, here's Baleful Strix for Michael Majors. It threatens to block the Monastery Swift Spear. What we'll see is whether or not Gerard has kept that Fork Bolt around. He certainly has resolved some brainstorms since we last saw it.
But he hasn't really been cantripping and shuffling. He's been shuffling his deck kind of blind and also cantripping the same way. So I don't think there's been a ton of opportunities for Gerard to shuffle that Fork Bolt away. We'll see.
Yeah, he does Ponder here. Certainly it would be decent against the Baleful Strix, as I can't imagine Gerard wants to trade his Swift Spear for it. See Forked Bolt among those top 3 cards.
Yeah. Gerard is not going to offer an attack, especially because he's got these red cards in his deck that aren't very helpful. He'd rather just sit here and say go and hope to draw a bolt rather than offer a trade.
And this will be interesting to me. Michael has 1 Spell Pierce in hand. And if you look at cards in hand, Michael's actually behind Gerard. And so if Gerard goes for the Forked Bolt, Michael could Spell Pierce it, but he may need to save his Spell Pierces for things like Dig Through Times at some point.
Either to resolve his own or to fight Fabiano's. Yeah, I don't think he can really do very much at all right now with that Spell Pierce unless it's protecting something big or pushing through something big.
And this is interesting. Gerard actually offers the Swift Spear for the Baleful Strix. He plays Delver of Secrets out first. And nonetheless, Michael's going to go ahead and accept that trade. And he's going to attempt to Swords to Plowshares the Delver on end step, which is going to work. And this feels like a win for Majors. He's got both creatures off the board.
For sure. I mean, especially since he's the one playing towards Dig Through Time right now. The cleaner and cleaner the board is, the more time he has to wait to be able to play around soft permission from Fabio's side of the table. It's a better and better spot for Majors.
We'll see if he decides to go for that Dig Through Time into 1 mana from Gerard. My guess is yes here. He can go ahead and he's going to go fetch first. He would have enough mana to both dig through time, play a Spell Pierce, and pay for days. So he should expect this to resolve.
Yeah. The issue is at the end of the day, it's only 2 cards. And it's not like Majors has a whole lot of knockouts from this spot. It's really just his 1 copy of Jace. He can still, keep hanging on and keep trading, but this dig through time is not locking up the game by any stretch.
Yeah, and that is where dig through time, isn't Treasure Cruise. It's only a 2-for-1. It finds you 2 really powerful cards, but I suppose that if he starts finding things like Baleful Strixes, then he can start converting those 2 cards into 3, maybe 4.
Yep.
If he can find his 1 of Jace. And I guess the one interesting for me is how aggressively is Michael going to try to find these 2 copies of Sphinx's tutelage?
Not in this kind of matchup because, Fabiano's going to be able to rebuild his board over and over again. I think that's going to be an incidental way for Majors to try to win. Maybe later on in the game, if Fabiano's deck is very small or Majors has built up a hand of cantrips where the tutelage can do a lot of work in 1 turn. But I don't think it's a high priority for him to find right now.
Yeah. It's weird. Michael's deck, in a lot of ways, reminds me of some of the land still decks that we used to see before Miracles became so popular, where it's playing this Snapcaster control strategy, but it always feels like it's in danger of losing control of the board.
Yeah, at least he and Serrani has, lingering souls.
Right.
You know what I mean?
At least, yeah, you can just be like, I'll make 4/1/1s.
Majors is really working here for everything.
All right, for Gerard, here's Snapcaster. He's going to go play this one out. Just hoping to gain. And I like how Gerard's playing this. He's really adapted his role to be, you feel like he's taking the control role here. Snapcasting back Gitaxian Probe.
And this is a 2-for-1 for Gerard, just the same way Dig Through Time was. It's not quite as fancy, but in terms of raw card count, Fabiano's doing just fine right now.
Look, we see Brainstorm, Spell Pierce, Baleful Strix. And that's one of the things I'm wondering if, because Michael is so light on card advantage, he needs to dig through time. That dig through time found him a Brainstorm and a Baleful Strix, which I think has the highest potential for card advantage. Baleful Strix is a 2-for-1. Brainstorm often can be a 2-for-1 when you pair it with a fetch land, which Michael already has. And Monastery Swiftspear will attack. So Gerard reloading with 2 more creatures. Majors will need to do more work. Here's a Gitaxian Probe of his own. Yeesh, from Gerard, we see 2 Lightning Bolts, a Forked Bolt, and a Spell Pierce.
So much for stabilizing this game via Baleful Strix. That's not going to be happening.
Now we find out why Gerard was fine trading away his Swiftspear. Those burn spells are going upstairs. Here's Brainstorm from Majors.
Gerard paused there. Majors knows that there's no response in Gerard's hand, but Gerard can't break the habit of keeping up appearances that he could have a counterspell of some sort.
Copy of Surgical Extraction drawn. Michael actually playing 2 of those in the main today. He is going deep on being a control deck.
Well, it's definitely powerful alongside Sphinx's tutelage, and in Legacy, there's all sorts of targets for Surgical Extraction.
Yeah.
Snapcaster Mage, Reanimator strategies, Dread strategies.
If only if there was a Lightning Bolt in Gerard's graveyard, then he'd be set.
Perhaps a discard spell to pair.
He does play 3 copies of Thoughtseize, but when you're in the market of Thoughtseizing a Lightning Bolt and surgically extracting it, I don't know how much headway we're making anymore.
That's been sort of the theme of Game 1 so far for Majors, is he's doing some stuff, but it's not sure. I'm not, totally convinced he's making a lot of forward progress.
Yeah, it's, this is where you'd expect a Miracles deck, either a Miracles deck to counterbalance you or a Stoneblade deck to make a Batter Skull.
Or, cast Supreme Verdict. There's a lot of potential lines here, but Majors is doing everything with maximum effort on all these exchanges.
Now on the other side, you might think that in a control mirror, this could be a pretty decent spot for Majors to be. He just has more blue cards than anyone he's playing against.
Yeah, he's not messing around with all of his creatures are sources of card advantage. He doesn't need any one particular thing to resolve. He's pretty well suited for those kind of games, but every turn it feels like Fabiano's reloading, kind of in this innocuous way, but it's still a lot for Majors to slog through.
And here's a snap casting a Swords to Plowshares for Michael Majors, which that feels like exactly what he needs to be doing. Get that 2-for-1. get some of these creatures off the board, because Gerard just has a ton of them. Here's a Swift Spear. Here's a Forked Bolt, 1/1.
Huge draw.
That's at least 4 damage. We'll see if Gerard adds a Lightning Bolt to the mix, and he will. So 3 from the Bolt, 3 from the Swift Spear, 2 from the Snapcaster Mage. That'll drop Michael down to 3 life. We know there's a Lightning Bolt in Gerard's hand.
But now, Majors, the Surgical Extraction is online. Another piece of the puzzle has been answered.
Oh, Michael's down. No, Michael's down to 2.
Just
There's
cast
a
it.
fetch-
You can just
Oh,
cast
that's black mana.
Yeah, you
Okay.
can just cast it.
Here's Baleful Strix. Jace the Mind Sculptor was the draw.
Just a mana short of being able to do everything here. Remember, he can't alt cast the extraction, but he has to cast it this turn.
Yeah, it's his only line. All right, here's Surgical Extraction on, I believe, Lightning Bolt. Yeah, it'll take care of Lightning Bolt. Let's check out Gerard's hand. There's at least 1 Lightning Bolt in there. Here cards a Spell Pierce.
So the upshot here is, Gerard can't just cast the Spell Pierce in the dark. If he draws any spell, he's got lethal here because he's got 2 2-power creatures, Majors
Yeah.
of 2. But if Gerard draws a land, if he draws a creature, if he draws a counter spell he can't cast, Majors can block, then he gets to resolve Jace. We're still not done stabilizing the game, but again, it's...
So when we talk about lethal burn here, Gerard has 1 more Forked Bolt in his deck. He has a Vapor Snag, which that's very real right now.
Yep, anything's good. Any spell's good.
Michael, with his only source of life gain is Swords to Plowshares his own creatures, so that's not going to do much. This is going to be really difficult for Michael.
Every turn has been...
Yeah.
It's not like there's been one particularly bad turn for Majors, It's just a lot of work.
Well, and I mean, the pacing of this game has been one I think that favors a control deck too.
It's just Majors has never had a really powerful turn or a lockout.
It looks like Gerard doesn't have the spell, so he attacks in. Michael has to trade away the Strix. He goes down to 1 off Swift Spear.
This is still problematic because Jace doesn't stabilize this game via unsummon because the Swift Spear has haste, and Majors is at 1. So again,
Yeah. Can he draw? He had to exile his last Swords to Plowshare. One of his Swords to Plowshares was exiled off of Snapcaster. 1 got exiled to the Dig Through Time. So this Snapcaster Mage doesn't actually have a Swords to Plowshares to flash back, I don't believe.
No.
Not to mention, remember, there's a Spell Pierce in Gerard's hand. So, yeah, Snapcaster will go for Ponder. No, 2 fetch lands aren't cards, so I think he'll have to shuffle here, as 2 of those were fetch lands.
Snapcaster Mage can still block.
Yep.
Like Gerard needs to draw something next turn.
Actually, Michael's going to go ahead and keep his holdings here. Okay. One of the things I do like about Sphinx's tutelage, just thinking about if Michael can stabilize, is Jace plus tutelage should end the game very quickly if you
yes.
brainstorm it.
This is bad news, though.
Here's True Name Nemesis. Michael can't Force of Will it, even if you were to have one. Once it's in play,
He's just done.
he's dead.
He has to race. He can't beat this card game 1. Or rather, excuse me, he cannot remove it from the table game 1. It's just here.
Yeah. Snapcaster is in play, giving flashback to Brainstorm, which he'll cast. Now Gerard has an opportunity to Spell Pierce here, which he will.
And I like Gerard not attacking there with the Swift Spear. It's easy to say, well, it's a 2-3
2/3
trades with 2 Snapcaster Mages, but Michael's deck could easily have Liliana the Veil, so he wants to leave Swift Spear in play as insurance against needed effect. Very heads-up play.
Chase is going to Brainstorm, find Surgical, Thoughtseize, land, and game 1 will go to Gerard Fabiano.
Yeah, that's got to feel good if you're on Fabiano's side of the table because it just felt like the type of game where Majors is slowly but surely taking it over, but without some way to lock out the game, Fabiano was able to play for several turns, keep his head above water, and Majors was just a little bit short of stabilizing the game.
Yeah, so from Majors, an innovation on trying to play Control and Legacy, I am not entirely sold based on that game, at least at the main deck. So let's look at the sideboard and see how he adapts.
All right, well, he's got 2 copies of Disenchant, 2 copies of Dread of Night, an Engineered Plague, 2 copies of Meddling Mage, a Path to Exile, Toxic Deluge, Spell Pierce, 2 copies of Flusterstorm, another Surgical Extraction, 2 copies of Cabal Therapy. I think he just wants to shore up his disadvantage against creatures, and he's got some good weapons here. Copy of Toxic Deluge, Path to Exile, and the Engineered Plague. Very good answer to True Name Nemesis.
Yeah, and you mentioned that one. he needs to have as many answers to true name as he can. So Engineered Plague seems somewhat clunky, but even in this situation, you just have to answer that card.
Right. I mean, you can use it to lock out Delver of Secrets for the remainder of the game if you get it ahead of time. Gerard's deck looks like the type of deck that could easily have Young Pyromancer, and it's an answer to True Name Nemesis. It is a little bit on the slow side, but it has to be coming in for Majors in this matchup, especially how vulnerable he is to True Name Nemesis.
How do you feel about cards like Spell Pierce or Flusterstorm in the matchup?
I don't mind Flusterstorm. I think the soft counters that are only good against spells are a little narrow and get bad as the game progresses, but Flusterstorm has a much longer shelf life than Spell Pierce typically has.
All right, so over on Gerard's side,
got a Pithing Needle, a Sulfuric Vortex, 2 Pyroblasts, Flusterstorm, 2 copies of Blood Moon, Umazawa's Jitte, 2 copies of Submerge, a Smash Smithereens, 2 Surgical Extractions, and this is Staticaster and a Hydroblast. I think that 1 or 2 of the extractions is okay to bring in here. Major's doing a lot with the graveyard. I think the Pyroblast, the Flusterstorm type of stuff, very good here. And Sulfuric Vortex, not a card that it looks like it's very easy for Majors to get off the table. And even though Majors may not be gaining a lot of life, still that kind of clock, that source of that ability, a way to have a clock without creatures, good for Gerard here.
Yeah, and actually, looking at Michael Majors' deck, unless he boards in these disenchants, I don't believe he has a way to knock a Sulfuric Vortex off the table.
Yeah, if it resolves, I mean, Major's got plenty of counters, but if it resolves, it's going to be good to go.
Yeah, so as much as this seems like a matchup where I would say the control deck typically gets better after sideboard, game 1, I feel like it's in Gerard's favor and only becomes more so after sideboarding.
I don't know. I think the sweepers on Major's side here, the additional removal spells, the Plague, the Deluge, they'll do some good work for him here. I mean, he doesn't have a lot of high-impact sideboard cards, but his best cards, I think, swing the matchup quite a bit.
Well, these players get ready for game 2. We will go ahead and see if we can do that. If you're just joining us, we're going to be streaming all weekend, so we are on Twitch TV. So you can join us in the chat on Twitch with our Twitch subscription program. So subscribe to us for only $4.99 a month. Get custom emoticons of commentators and some of our favorite creatures out of the SCG Creature Collection. Also get exclusive subscriber-only chat. This is twitch.tv/SCG Live. We'll be broadcasting today and tomorrow, the 16 rounds of the Swiss, and then the top 8 on Sunday.
Yeah, a lot of Magic over the course of this weekend. 3 full days of coverage for people competing in the events. Also, we're going to have IQs over the course of the weekend as well. Full slate of Magic. A standard Open Series event. We got a lot going on.
All right, so game 1 to Gerard Fabiano. 14th right now on our players' leaderboard. But Michael Majors, one of the hotter players in Magic recently, having won a Grand Prix in the last month. And like I said before, playing Sphinx's Tutelage in Legacy.
Yep. A player with a lot of strikes and gutters over the last couple of years. Nearly made Platinum, had a really rough pro season, but has been doing very well for himself on the Open Series. Top 8 performance in Charlotte last weekend, and a Grand Prix win in San Diego a few weeks back.
All right, well, Michael's on the play again for game 2. This time it'll be Monastery Swift Sphere crashing in for Gerard, puts Michael down to 19, and Swords to Plowshares for Michael will answer it. Michael leading off on 2 basics here. Though Gerard not as committed to the LD package as you'd normally see Delver. Only 3 copies of Wasteland, and I don't believe he's stifling at all.
No copies of Stifle.
See, Gerard ponders before playing a land. He'll cast a Gitaxian Probe. So we look at Majors' hand. It's lands 3 and 4. They're both polluted deltas. A Snapcaster Mage, a Brainstorm, and a Dig Through Time. This looks pretty perfect for the matchup.
Yeah, I mean, it's a solid mixture of control cards here. Again, there's some vulnerability to creatures early on, but as long as Gerard is spending his time in the early game cantripping, Major should have time to set up shop.
Land for Gerard. He's going to crack the fetch land. Does he have a replacement threat? Where Michael's covered this game, though, is even if Gerard plays another creature, Michael does have the Snapcaster at the ready, along with land number 3. Swords to Plowshares is in the graveyard. So no creature from Gerard, it is just a copy of Ponder.
And very good news for Majors, who just needs some breathing space.
Yeah, go back over to Michael. His draw for the turn was another copy of Brainstorm, which looks like he'll go ahead and lead out on. Finds more Brainstorms, a fetch land, a Gitaxian Probe. A little surprised to see him Brainstorm just because I'm not sure he's looking for anything in particular.
Well, I don't think he's likely to just say go here. So, he's got a lot of cantrips to replace the Brainstorm with. It's not like it's one piece of the puzzle. And at this point, I'm just kind of looking for more information, a little more progress in the game. He has to know how he's going to evaluate, how much does he have to care about creatures that Gerard's trying to resolve. A little information up front here can be very valuable.
Yeah, I do suppose he doesn't actually have an answer in hand right now to the possibility of Gerard just playing a turn 3 True Name Nemesis.
Yeah.
So he may like to finding an answer to that could be pretty premium. At the same time, he does have a dig through time, so filling up his graveyard does have value. It also gives him a second card to Snapcast.
Yeah, with the Snapcaster Mage in hand and with Dig Through Time, Majors just has an incentive to cast spells, period. He doesn't really want to be passing through the turns, not doing anything. And even though I agree with you, his hand wasn't particularly bad, there's no particular piece he was looking for with that Brainstorm, I think it's still fine for him to be casting it.
All right, and this was the fear. Michael played land 3, and Gerard taps out for True Name Nemesis. Michael does not have Force of Will in hand, and he could have gone for a Brainstorm for a Force of Will there, but did not. Which, to me, masks, I'm not sure if he kept in all the forces. They're not particularly good here outside of the card True Name Nemesis. So he'll go ahead and draw for the turn, now crack a fetch land. He's going to put pressure on him to find his copy of Engineered Plague or Toxic Deluge if he wants to get rid of the True Name.
Yep.
Lead off with a Gitaxian Probe. We see 2 Brainstorms, a Snapcaster Mage, a Lightning Bolt, and a 4th land from Gerard. This is just the scary part. Like I said before, Gerard has just as much card advantage as Michael does.
Yeah, I mean, Majors is not locking him out of the game, nor is he generating an overwhelming edge and card advantage. And, Gerard can apply pressure and still hang around even if Majors is able to fend him off in some of these exchanges, which is exactly what you saw in the first game.
Here's a big Brainstorm from Michael. Can he find one of his answers? He cannot. Find Spell Pierce and Brainstorm and more lands, so this True Name will get in for some damage.
Yep. And now Major is drawing pretty thin here, just the copy of Toxic Deluge and Engineered Plague to answer this True Name Nemesis.
He has a lot of cantrips, but his cantrips just seem to be finding more cantrips right now.
Yeah. Now he is still playing towards Dig Through Time, and that gives him a lot of looks, along with the other cantrips in his hand, of being able to find Engineered Plague or Toxic Deluge.
Goes ahead and cracks a fetch land here. He may go for a second cantrip while he has Gerard tapped out. But yeah, remember, a lot of his anti-creature plan here seems to hinge on cards like Baleful Strix, which obviously won't work against True Name Nemesis.
We don't have, the way that the legacy metagame is right now, there are not a lot of True Name Nemesis floating around. The format's been very combo-centric, and True Name Nemesis is in matchups about, creatures and attacking and equipment. And Legacy's not really in that kind of place right now. But that doesn't mean the card's not super good in some spots, and this is the kind of matchup. All
right, well, Michael digging deep for that answer. It'll be a Dig Through Time. Played and cracks a fetch land, exiled his whole graveyard except for 1 Swords to Plowshares. We'll see if in those top 7 he can find the Deluge or the Engineered Plague. Certainly will be taking either if he finds them, which he has not. Oh, no, wait, Engineered Plague was found. So he does have that.
Yep.
But he'll need to make sure it resolves for sure. Does have ability to take Force of Will here. Sphinx's Tutelage as well, but he's going to go ahead and leave those. Takes Engineered Plague and a blue card. Mentioned before, did not expect him to be very aggressive about getting those Sphinx's Tutelages.
Yeah, that's an afterthought. He's got to win the battle on the ground first, and if he's able to do that, he can get to Tutelage later or win the game through something like Jace. Although Gerard picking up a second copy of Wasteland is very potent here. He might just cut Majors off of black.
Let's see, Michael Majors, 3 copies of Underground Sea. So as long as he has a fetch land, he can reassemble the Engineered Plague. Here's an attack for 3, though. It'll put Majors down to 12. There's a Wasteland on Underground Sea. And on the other one. So you called it there. See, as Michael kept a fetch land around and all those cantrips. Gerard passes back. Force of Will drawn for Michael, but I don't think he kept a land. So he'll have to Brainstorm. That's going to mean another turn of True Name Nemesis hitting. And he does find a Polluted Delta in here.
Not only, so the Polluted Delta is very good news, but he also has to be able to still punch through the Engineer Plague next turn. Even with
Yeah.
a black source of mana, there's no guarantee that it resolves.
It does look like he's kept around a Force of Will just for that purpose, but he'll play the land and pass. This means he'll be taking 3 more off the True Name, 1 off the fetch land. His life total is becoming a risk again.
Yep.
Gerard lightning bolts Michael down to 9. So Michael at a virtual 5.
Well, looks like Majors is contemplating going for a Spell Pierce here.
Looks like he'll do that. Now here's the danger by going for it. He's going to get that last Underground Sea. If Gerard finds 1 more Wasteland, Michael will not have any seas left. He has 1 basic swamp in the deck, but he won't have the black mana to cast this Engineered Plague next turn.
And I think that's why you saw some hesitation, but Michael at this point just needs to start casting his spells on time.
Yep.
He can't afford to burn off 2 more mana and then try to resolve the Plague next turn, getting bolted down to 8 and then taking an attack down to 5.
All right, so he goes to 11. That was 1 damage off the fetch land. We go back over to Gerard. Starts on a Brainstorm. Can he find another copy of Wasteland? That would be certainly backbreaking. Looks like instead he's found Monastery Swift Spear. Here's another fetch land crack from Gerard. Getting basic island. And you can see he is full throttle right now. Aggressively going after Michael's life total. Here's Monastery Swift Spear. Does he have a cantrip to pump it? And Michael, he's going to force the Swift Spear, pitching Brainstorm. That puts Michael down to 10. This does mean that he has no defense for the Engineered Plague.
Yep.
Michael down to 7 off True Name. So if Gerard has found a Spell Pierce here, he's going to get to counter the Engineered Plague. Michael has a Spell Pierce of his own, but he has no mana for it. So try for Engineered Plague, and here's the Pierce from Gerard. That was Michael's answer.
And the issue there from Major side of the table is, are you going to let the Swift Spear resolve, hit you, then you try to resolve the Plague the next turn, you get hit again. Just resolving the Engineer Plague and using your Force of Will that way is no guarantee of anything.
Right, yeah, the other way he could have let Swift Spear resolve, use the Force of Will to protect his Engineered Plague, but yes, he would have taken at least 2 damage off the Swift Spear, if not more. But now the True Name hits Michael down to 4. He only had 2 answers to it in his deck. One of them's now in the graveyard. Here's a Ponder. Can he find the Deluge? Find Sphinx's Tutelage and Baleful Strix. Those won't work, so he'll shuffle. And if you go back, it's that double Wasteland that really seemed to hurt Michael. It took him a turn. It made him have to wait a turn on his Engineered Plague. It meant that he couldn't Spell Pierce back on the Spell Pierce.
It meant that Fabiano's Spell Pierce was also backbreaking.
Right.
And he needed all of his mana here.
And there you have it. So 2-0, Gerard Fabiano defeats Michael Majors. Moves to 2-0.
Yeah, I mean, a very convincing 2-game set there from Fabiano. Was able to apply pressure early on in the game and not necessarily wither as the game progressed. A very good spot for an aggressive deck to be in a matchup. A lot of that credit goes to True Name Nemesis. Majors could never really stabilize the game against that card. Had a couple outs in the post-board games, but wasn't able to get his Engineer Plague to resolve, wasn't able to find Toxic Deluge, and Fabiano was able to win both games pretty straightforward, convincing fashion.
Yeah, so interesting deck list from Gerard. We said earlier we expect him